Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Adult Child of Dysfunction. Today, we have with us Emma Lyons. She's a trauma informed healer, subconscious programming guide, and someone who had to completely dismantle the roles she was cast in to reclaim her life. I absolutely love that, actually. I didn't take that from your bio, I took it from somewhere else. But we're just going to jump right in because one of the comments Emma made in our talk was about going no contact with her mother. And so we got into this conversation, and it literally, this is a very common theme for people because trauma doesn't just start right here. It usually starts generation after generation after generation, way, way back when. So that is really a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. But I just want to welcome you, Emma. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, no, I totally get it because it wasn't until, well, especially when you talk about the intergenerational thing or the generational trauma, it wasn't until I could really look back at my parents as having the same wounds or similar wounds that I did and realize that that was the cause of why they did what they did to me, that I
Yeah.
could really look at it from a generational perspective and the fact that we all have these wounds that we carry. And if we don't break that cycle, they're going to continue forever and ever. And my parents were just the byproduct of their parents' wounds. So,
Yes, 100%. And
yeah.
there's a tendency, like in older generations, to minimize the damage. Like, I think my grandmother, my mother's mother, was some narcissist, probably. She was very toxic. But when I talk to my aunt and my mother about it, they're like, oh, she was just a bit anxious, she just had some problems. But I mean, I've recently discovered that she was sexually abusing my uncle. So, this is not just someone who had a bit of anxiety.
Exactly. And and it travels down. So all of the things that all the reactions, all the trauma, all the everything, so then you were treated like that.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about what led up to the going no contact.
Well, I mean, I had been kind of aware that I was in Mexico and I had this accident and I was noticing that my mom was being quite controlling. I was trying to like lay down some boundaries and say that I need some space, and she would continuously like insist that I have a call, even though I said I need some space. I'm going through some things. I'm going through a difficult time, and she would never like ask, "Oh, how are you?" She just wants to know where I am. She wants to have this phone call, and that is her focus, and then back on herself and what she's going through. And I noticed that that's very much a pattern. This isn't just a one-off thing. I had been kind of feeling uncomfortable about these interactions for a long time, but I hadn't been really able to identify clearly because this kind of abuse, covert narcissistic abuse, it's so subtle that it can be invisible. And this is why it's so insidious and dangerous, because people like myself, the scapegoat, we just totally internalize it and make it my fault. And that's part of the role that we're playing in these family systems, to kind of hold up this toxicity within the family that everyone else is just ignoring.
Absolutely. And we do all take a role. I think in the last episode I did, we were just talking about all the different roles people play. So for the listeners, can you explain the scapegoat?
Yeah, the scapegoat is often the most sensitive one in the family, the weird one. I was the weird one, the sensitive one. I was told that I was too sensitive, that I was self-absorbed if I was upset. And basically you're the landfill for the family's trauma. Even if they don't blame you overtly, they might do. They might say, "Oh, it's your fault and you don't can't do anything right." But also it can be very energetic and just kind of dumping their trauma on you. And often it's fused with the invisible child as well. That was my case. I was also the invisible child, kind of off. Everyone just assumed that I was okay. Even though I wasn't, they never really checked in to see how I was. They just went on about their business. So the scapegoat is the role that kind of is most damaged by this toxic family system, and can go on if you work through your trauma to become the truth teller of the family, and to kind of burn it out and break down that toxicity for everyone else.
Absolutely. And it's, it's funny the roles when you say you were this and that, because so many
Yeah,
times people have said to me, well, that doesn't really fit into me at all times of my life. And I'm like, well, it can definitely change. You
yeah.
can, you know, if you
It's
all of a sudden
fluid.
have a brother
Yeah.
who's acting like the hero, and then all of a sudden he starts acting out and being the one that takes the attention off the rest of the family by getting in trouble, going to jail, and all of a sudden now you step in and you're the caretaker and you're the parentified one. And your roles change constantly throughout your life.
Yes, they absolutely can do. My sister, I think she flirted with the scapegoat role, my younger sister, but I think I was the long-term stand-in for that.
Yeah, there's always one, right? Or were you in the middle?
Yeah, I was the middle child, so the middle child often gets ignored anyway because the parents have this, and that's what I thought it was. Because all my life I've been like, why am I like this? Why do I have all these really deeply ingrained negative toxic, negative belief systems? And I thought it was emotional neglect, first of all, but because of the middle child, and the parents trying to look after someone who's up climbing, doing the older daughter and the younger one who are they both, and then the middle one kind of gets ignored. But in my case, it was actually even more than that.
Oh, okay. So tell me, so you're talking at what age? I guess you're using a lot of words that clearly you've been in help, you're getting help, you're healing, you're going through the process. At what age did you realize all of this was going on? Was there like an aha moment?
Well, I mean, it was actually quite recently. It was all because all my life I've recognized that I internalized these things, and I was asking, why do I have all these belief systems like someone who's been sexually abused or something? And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me until, fairly recently when I encountered someone who I recognized was likely a covert narcissist, and I recognized she was an echo for my mother. And then I also had a dream which kind of brought it to my attention. So this is quite new, like the label, the covert narcissist role, which kind of puts it on a new level of gravity, and also definitely affected me in a deeper way than just saying, oh, she's a little bit manipulative, or it's another level of something to cope with. But I think that's an important stage in recovering from it, recognizing that the damage was done and what exactly happened.
Oh yeah.
It
And I
wasn't your
remember, I mean, I
fault.
was I was going to therapy and it was a while, and finally one day I was like, why did nobody tell me my mother was a narcissist? Like why have you never I finally was like, why have you never used those words? Because somebody else was like, my gosh, your mom was completely narcissistic, and started gave me books and things to read, and I was like, oh my God, like when it finally made sense, the level of manipulation, it like you said, it took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah. And
It
the
was
thing is, like, my mother is kind of covert narcissist. So it's much, I mean, with people like Donald Trump and et al., it's very obvious. But with covert narcissist, it's much more subtle. And, other people won't even see it.
yeah.
So I think that adds another level because you kind of gaslight yourself and say, oh, what was wrong? Something was wrong with me, obviously, because my family was normal.
Yeah. And you talk about gaslighting, and that's what was actually going through my head when you said that, because I was like, it's so crazy when you have those narcissists, and people out there can probably relate to this. And it leads into that people pleasing and that lack of identity and everything else, because it's literally like you can know 100% you're right about something. And by the end of the conversation, you're apologizing for it. And it's like, how does that even happen? Like,
Yeah, I think this is the internalized shame that we take on, especially as the scapegoat. We kind of internalize all that shame, and it makes total sense. I mean, I was been reading about the scapegoat, and scapegoats internalize these roles. I'm ugly, I'm defective, there's something wrong with me in order to cope, and that's exactly what I did. I check all the boxes for the scapegoat. So it's really interesting to see that that was a kind of way of coping because we have to see our parents as kind of they can do no wrong. So the
right,
problem must be me.
right. Yep.
And
And the
even when
fact
you
that
go
you're
to therapists, they don't see it. A lot of the time, therapists won't see the pattern. It's
right.
invisible to people who don't know about these things, and especially when it's happening in a subtle form, like in covert forms.
Right. And not only that, but as a therapist legally, she's like, I never met your mother. I can't diagnose your mother. I can't say that, you know? But I'm like, well, you could have clued me in. Like, you could have been like, hey, you ought to go read some books on narcissistic parents, or, you know what I mean? Like, you could, because,
Oh, absolutely.
but never. And my mother, and it was funny because my mother was a child psychiatrist. So I said, I was literally manipulated by the best.
Oh my God. Wow.
I'm like, she had the power. She knew what was going on with our brains. Like, how do you do that to a child? I have no idea. But yeah, so what did you talk about what you did and how you kind of got started? Like, did you have an aha moment where all of a sudden you were like, wow, I'm just like, what was your breaking point? Because I know, like, with me, I was like, it was with my first husband, and people would say, you know, it's not right that he talked to you that way. People shouldn't talk to you that way. And you're allowed to stick up for yourself, and you're allowed to have your own ideas and thoughts and values. And that was really my wake up call, was when I realized I was more of like just going through the motions of life.
So you were kind of stuck in fawning mode and just letting people and
Well, among other things, you know, I had a
yeah.
lot when I mean, I've been working on this whole thing for 30 years. So I've
Wow.
had, you know, there was a lot of stuff going on, but that was the biggest one, is that I just, you know, complete and total lack of boundaries, complete and total lack of
Yeah.
self, really.
Yeah. You definitely lose yourself in that role. I mean, the aha moment for me when the penny really dropped, I had a dream. And the dream was really interesting. It was in this dream, I was someone else. I was like a boy, and it was kind of like this White Lotus type family, so kind of a narcissistic mother. And we were in this restaurant, and I had a tray. There was no one else there. I dropped the tray, and the mother was like, "How dare you? What's everyone going to think? How can you do this?" And then I woke up, and I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was. It was complete disorientation, and I've never ever had that before in a dream that I can recall. And that from that point, I realized that this is like a metaphor of my subconscious. And there were other dreams as well. Obviously, this wasn't the first one, but that was really where the penny dropped. And I was like, oh my God, this is like waking up within a narcissistic system, not knowing who you are because you've been gaslit and controlled all your life.
Yeah.
And that was what my subconscious was telling me. So it was pretty dramatic, and but to wake up from a dream and not to know who you are or where you are is something else.
And it probably felt so real. So it probably felt so familiar. It would probably scared you.
Yeah, it was scary. It's terrifying to not know who you are
Yeah.
or to not know who you think you are.
Right, right. And yeah, I was just talking to someone the other day, and we got into that conversation about really at some point you do lose who you are because you're so busy just doing, saying, and being what everybody else wants you to be. It's like to
Yeah.
make the peace, or like as the scapegoat, you know, or as the I was always more of like the hero type, where I had to just make everything good. Everything, as long as everything was perfect in the house, the house would function somewhat okay. So I was, you know, always the straight A student, the being the best at everything, because I figured, well, that would take the attention off everything else if I could get a little bit of that attention over here. And of course that didn't work. It was like so superficial and everything else, but you forget who you are, you really, because
Yeah.
I remember a therapist saying to me one time, well, who are you? And I'm like, it depends on what you need me to be.
Wow. Wow.
You know, you turn into like a chameleon, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're trying to please people all the time. I think the proving was what I had. I was constantly trying to prove that I was good enough.
Hmm.
To my mother, to my family, and most of all to myself because of this internal belief that I'd internalized that there is something inherently defective about me. And obviously that's an impossible because if you believe yourself to be defective, you obviously are going to keep proving that by everything that you do.
Right, you're going to keep yeah, you're going to keep proving that theory to yourself
You're going to
over and over
keep
again because it's all you think
reinforcing
about.
it every time. Yeah, and that's exactly what I did.
Nice. So you got into, so with that, I mean, being such a, I mean, a dream is so deep into your subconscious. That's what
Yes.
triggered you probably to go into the subconscious work and working with the reframing and the subconscious work that you do now, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been doing this healing work for a long time, and the problem that I have now with kind of healing circles is they often, and I think I've been guilty of this myself. They often have a very superficial kind of layout of what's wrong. If things aren't working for you, it's just your belief systems. It's just because you believe rich people are bad or something like that. But that totally. That's a very superficial kind of cast on the whole thing. Because if you're operating on an operating system that where you're playing a role of scapegoat or something else within this toxic system that we're living in, that is fundamental. That's like the groundwork, and the beliefs are kind of additional to that. So for years I've been doing this belief work and changing my beliefs and work, but really I was just doing feng shui of the furniture, and the house was on fire.
Right.
So obviously nothing was going to work, and I see that a lot with other people. That's what they're doing. That's what I did. So I can see it very clearly with other people and other healers and other coaches. They 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 just simplify it, and they're going to have this whole layer of people that it's not going to work for, and it's not because they can't work for them. It's because they're stuck in this operating system that hasn't been addressed by this kind of top layer work.
Right. And I was saying yesterday to someone, we were talking about it, and she was talking about, like affirmations when you're like severely depressed and stuff. And I'm like, you can't think your way out of depression.
Absolutely
Like
not.
it's just not possible. I mean, and it's almost more detrimental because it just, especially when you're in like a crisis state, it makes you angry. And then it's like it's a
Yeah,
snowball effect. And I'm like, you can't just, when you're in a deep depression, you cannot just think your way out of it. And people are like, just be happy. Well, if we could just be, if someone could just be happy when they were depressed, they would
yeah.
just be happy.
My mother would just tell me to just cheer up, just cheer
Hmm.
up. Yeah, and it's just so dismissive, really. It's
Yeah.
so dismissive. It's so invalidating of your pain. And that's the other thing when you're going through this process and going through all the grief, other people, they don't know how to deal with that, and they feel uncomfortable and they project that discomfort on you. They say, "Oh, you're triggered. There's something wrong with you. You need to deal with this." But you're just expressing your feelings, and this makes people uncomfortable. And this is the result of living in a narcissistic world, because these narcissistic systems aren't just within our family. It's like fractals. It's like they are templates for every single space out there in the world, from the corporations to the states to the interstate net system. And you could see it everywhere, and how these countries and people all play these different roles. And like we talked about earlier, Tammy, sometimes the roles change. Like the narcissistic autocrat might become the victim and vice versa, because there's moving around there. Until we address the underlying system, we're not, it's going to keep repeating itself as it has throughout all human history.
Oh, absolutely. And everything, I always say, like, you are a byproduct of your mom's trauma. There's just
Yeah.
and absolutely until you do it, like you were saying about the generational trauma. So, what kind of work did you dive into to really go deep? What worked for you?
Well, it's really about feeling the feelings. And also, I think it's somatic work is really
Mhm.
important, like releasing things through your body, because there's this idea that it's just in your mind. And I think that's also very limited. It's actually in your body. Your body responds. My body knew these messages from my mother were uncomfortable before I did. Before I realized what was going on, I'd fall asleep and have a dream about, some kind of toxic reaction from my mother without just I felt uncomfortable, but I didn't know why, but my body did. So you've got to work with the body. The body, it's like an animal, it's stuck in survival mode. And like you said, you can't think your way out of it. You've got to release that trauma. So I think it's about feeling it. It's about
Mhm.
talking to people who understand, and not talking to people who are going to invalidate you and say that it didn't happen or that it wasn't that bad, because God knows we gaslight ourselves enough.
Right.
We're yeah. find people who understand and talk to them, create a community and work. What's worked for me is really understanding where it comes from and kind of seeing the systemic nature, but that's helped me a bit. But obviously there's still grief and I'm still in the process and I expect to be still in the process for a long time because this is not a one and done
No.
type thing. It's like a spiral, you know? It's
Well, and I've
healing
had
is
people
not linear.
And I've had people say, I heal my clients in one session, and I'm like, people are such complicated layers, and you're just going to unravel another layer.
Yeah, exactly.
You
You've
can
healed
get to,
one layer and more will be revealed.
yep, yep. And I like to believe that I am given the layers of unpeeling as I'm able to handle them. Because if
Yeah.
all of your layers unraveled at one time, you would never be able to handle that mentally.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It would be
Yeah.
too much
So,
emotionally and energetically and
mm,
everything.
yeah, it's
But yeah,
funny.
I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Uh, yeah, just like somatic work, working with the body, talking about it, I think is really important. So all of those things, talking about it is so crucial to breaking the shame because the shame says don't talk about it, keep the secret, don't share. So when you share about it, even with friends or publicly, if you feel that way inclined, you are literally breaking that spell.
Yep. And you're getting it out of your, like you said, you're getting it out of your body because
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what physical symptoms manifested for you, but like for me, it was like bleeding ulcers at 18. Like with
Wow.
no reason, like, and it wasn't, what's your home life like? What's going on in your world? It was just, here's
Take this
Tagamet and
pill.
two of these, and if it gets any worse, we'll have to do surgery. Like that's clearly not the answer, you know? But we
Our
talk about
world
that
is
all the
just about
time.
dealing with symptoms, not addressing the root cause. Then nobody wants to see where this is coming from because it's such a big issue.
Oh yeah.
People are
And
terrified. Mm.
oh yeah, definitely. I mean, what did you have physical symptoms as well as?
I had depression, like lifelong depression, and my family never noticed. And, you know, that was painful in itself. Like, and I was recent, like a couple of years ago, I was at home with my mother and I was depressed and it was quite obvious, I think. And my mother came up and said, "Oh, you're like a lady of leisure, at the moment." So quite like dismissive and invalidating and cruel outright.
Yeah, like it didn't even matter.
No, she didn't even see me. But it was actually like a knife in the back. It
Mm.
was it was conscious thing. She didn't often do that, but that was one of the strategies that she would occasionally use. She's not a malignant narcissist, a more covert type, so these things were kind of rare and very painful, especially I'm a very sensitive person. But she never saw me. I could be like right beside her, or I could be in Timbuktu, and she would not really see me because she did not want to see me. She does not never want to know me um, for who I really was.
Now, do you know her? I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk about your mother, but did you know her history as to what could have possibly why she was like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, her mother was a real battle axe, probably some kind of malignant narcissist. I don't know. And I think I mentioned I found out recently that she was sexually abusing my uncle, my mother's, and my mother would say, "Oh, she just wasn't a very happy woman,"
Mm,
when she's talking about her mother. But her mother was, malignant. I never liked her as a child myself. She was aggressive. I remember her once grabbing me and forcing me to go with her to the market. And no, I don't know what she did to my mother or what, but I mean, she was not able to give them love. She provided them
right.
with all the kind of what their food and their clothing, and they're well off relatively. But in terms of love and emotional support, like nothing, I don't think she would have been capable of that at all. And my mother similarly, but it was just in a less visible format.
Right. So you went no contact with your mother. Are you still no contact with her?
Yes. Yeah. I have
And
to detox. I have
yeah.
to detox. So.
Now, talk about that for the listeners, because I know a lot of listeners are like, they're so tired of hearing, it's your mother. How do you do that? Why would you do that? Explain your rationalization as to the point where you finally were like, enough is enough. Because you have to give yourself some grace with that, because all your life,
Yeah.
that's what I heard. Like, you can't be mad at your mother. She's your mother. Like, didn't matter
Yeah,
what she did.
and people excuse the mother. They're like, "Oh, you can't complain about your mother." Your mother is kind of deified in our society, in our culture. The mother can do no wrong. You can't criticize your mother, but mothers are human, you know. Mothers are traumatized, obviously, and they're going to pass that on. So for me, it was like she wasn't respecting my boundaries. I'd keep asking for space, and she'd keep trying to contact me, and then like send me a text message on a different number and stuff. And I mean, I just had to block her. And then eventually I just unblocked her and said, look, I need some space. I'll be in touch if and when I can.
And talk about how that felt after you did that, once you got past the initial shock of, I can't believe I just did that.
Yeah, there's a constant, am I doing the right thing? Am I overreacting? But I need to prioritize my peace for once. And this is what I need to reclaim my peace because she doesn't respect my peace. She only cares about me in so much as it soothes her. That's why she wants to know where I am. She doesn't care how I am internally. She just wants to be able to say, Emma is here, Emma is there, so that she can soothe her own anxiety. And that's not enough for me. And
Right.
this is not a once, this has been my whole life. And I've all my life I've felt obligated to talk to her when I had nothing to say to her just because she insisted in speaking to me. And I'm not going to do that to myself anymore. I'm not
So,
going to have a conversation about the weather just so that she can feel soothed.
right.
If it makes me feel uncomfortable, no.
So,
She's had her time.
right. So, would you say again, like, I know there's a lot of people out there that are struggling with this. I've talked to three or four just this week about wanting to go no contact. Would you say it was liberating once you got past the initial shock of it?
Yeah, I think you've got to just make that decision and send the final message about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and then like block them, change your number. You're an adult. You're not a child anymore.
Right.
You're not beneath this person. They can't control you anymore unless you give them that leash. And you could take that leash off. And you don't owe your mother or whoever it is any explanation. You're an adult. When
Mm-hmm.
you're a child, it's really hard to say to a child, the child is helpless. There's
Exactly.
nothing they can do. But as an adult, you could take back your power, and you're allowed. Like if your friend is being toxic and dismissive of you, you take your space back. And so you do that with your family. Just because you're blood related to the person doesn't give them rights to invalidate and abuse you. No.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, once you're an adult, I said that to someone the other day. I was like, if they were not your brother, would they be in your life? And she
Hmm.
said, absolutely not. I said, then get them out. Get them out. I know it's blood, but if it's toxic, it needs to go for your own mental health,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
your own. And it's a long time. I mean, you went no contact. How, I don't know how old you are, but you went no contact after decades of this.
Oh yeah, yeah, decades of this. Yeah. So this is like I've given her, she's taken my blood, sweat, tears. She's taken and I just like what in the grief that I was experiencing, I wrote a poem like it's about like the lost childhood, the lost life, the life that couldn't have been, that you'll never remember, that never was. So there's all this grieving that needs to happen. And it's because someone else was controlling and limiting you. And basically, you bought into that. So, because it was your mother or your family, your father that told you these things or that energetically dumped on you, that you believed it all. And, especially if you were the scapegoat, like you're going to be very damaged from this.
Right.
Um, I mean, all the roles, but especially like the golden child, even the golden child isn't allowed to have their own identity. They basically just step into the narcissist, they play it out again. but we've got to break the cycle. And the way we break the cycle is by speaking about it
Yep.
and, taking back our power. And that might mean that it likely does mean, taking some time. You're allowed to take some time to recover. You can't recover if you're sitting in a toxic field.
No,
And if you're in the field of the narcissist, that field is toxic. You can't recover there.
no. I say that anytime, whether it's addiction or whatever it is, if you go right back into the toxic environment that put you there in the first place, it's never, never, never going to work.
No.
Never. And it's unfortunate, but that's life. I tell people that's life. That's cyclical. Like people change, people go in and out of relationships. They're put there for reasons. Like learn from every experience and know that not every relationship and every experience is going to stay. I mean, it's just that's how life works. Just learn from them. But
Yeah.
yeah, well,
Um,
it's
so stop trying to change them. They're not going to change a narcissistic, dysfunctional family. They're not going to recognize. But even if you try to tell them, point to their dysfunction, they're gonna gaslight you and project it back on you. So that's a waste of time. And if you stay in the field, you might be tempted to do something like that. So take back your power, take your space, and give yourself the time to recover.
Yep. And I agree with, when we always think we can change people or we can be good enough that they're going to want to change. And especially when you're dealing with a narcissist. Oh, I love your cat.
Hello.
Especially when you're dealing with that, you can't even hardly. I had one girl that was like, well, I'm going to get him to go to therapy. I was like, he will never admit that part of the problem could possibly be him. Like that's the whole thing. Like it will, he won't go. And somehow it's going to turn around and you're not going to like what you find like when it flips. And eventually she's like, you're right. You can't change someone. That's who he is. And I'm like, absolutely not. And for your own peace of mind, don't try to change someone, change yourself, grow and do what you got to do to be happy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I love what you do. So how do you work with people? I mean,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I do energy work with people, and I mean, I'm in the process of transitioning to a bigger kind of because I've been getting all these downloads about the trauma matrix and how the real matrix is trauma. So I'm setting up this kind of I'm leveling up what I'm doing, moving from kind of personal trauma around limiting your power to this kind of the underlay of trauma, and that's really what I'm focusing on. So at the moment, I'm creating something for scapegoats particularly, and I have a special offer for them. So if people want to check that out, I'll pass on the link to you too. So I'm just looking for a couple of people to beta test a process that I'm looking to take people through. So if you're interested in that, definitely check me out. Or, I just say to people, if this is speaking to you, it's speaking to you for a reason. If you're still here in this conversation, there's something here for you. So, act on it. Get help.
yeah. And talking about it is the absolute first place to start. That's no lie. And just being aware,
Yeah,
I've had people say, oh, awareness is the key. Well, awareness is the key, but then you still have to take action. So,
absolutely. Awareness is step one, recognizing, then you've
mhm,
got to go through the process of feeling it all, and
mhm,
that's very painful if you've had a lifetime where you've been the victim of abuse, narcissistic abuse, recognizing and uncovering that. It's a betrayal, particularly if it was your mother, your father, someone who you thought was someone that you thought you could trust. They were actually stabbing a knife in your back, you know.
right. So, what would you give if you had to give maybe a couple? Because it seems like the conversation went completely to narcissism, which is fine. I mean, that's fine
That's
because
okay.
so many people are dealing with it. What are some like quick red flags for people if they're questioning if that's what's wrong or what's going on or the relationship they're in?
I think it's about recognizing, like, how do you feel around this person? 'Cause, I think narcissists, they kind of suck your energy. They make everything about them in one way or another. So if you're around someone who's telling you that you're too much, that you're too sensitive, they're invalidating your feelings. And you just feel like after you've had a conversation with them that was just like paper thin, that didn't go beyond the surface, and that was all about them, all about, soothing their curiosity and their anxiety, then, there are some questions. I think it's important to ask yourself some questions to see whether that relationship is serving you. And you don't have to kind of figure out if they're a narcissist, but even if they're just sucking you dry like that, I think you're entitled to create some space, even if it's not going no contact. I mean, just say that you'll talk to the person once in a blue moon or whatever. You don't have to, don't, you shouldn't feel obligated to talk to someone once a week or once a day or once a whatever they want, just to make them feel better.
Right.
So it's really checking into how you're feeling when you're around them.
Right.
And just become aware of narcissism, and also the more subtle forms of narcissism, like covert narcissism, because I knew all about narcissism, but I never knew my mother, that I never clocked that my mother might be a covert narcissist. This is the thing. I'd read all about it, listened to podcasts, but I'd never clocked it. I always thought that I was just like exceptionally sensitive and that I had internalized all this stuff because of like emotional neglect. But it turns out there was something more insidious happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
And
think that recognizing that was in a sense was very painful, but also in a way somewhat validating because it wasn't just me then. There was something bigger going on.
well, and I think in general, just listening to your gut. I mean, so many people, especially when you grew up in chaos and being mistreated and neglected, you were taught not to listen to your gut instinct
Oh
because
yeah.
either you listened to it and it didn't matter if you said something, you were shot down for it or punished for it. But I think once you become an adult and you're out on your own, I think that's the biggest piece of advice I can give people is if it doesn't feel right, it's not.
I think that you've just summed it up exactly. It's that simple. If it doesn't feel right, act as if it's true. Act
Yeah.
like it's true.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I feel like your gut instinct is your truth. I mean, it absolutely your truth. So, absolutely. Well, so great. So, if people, I know you're going to give a free gift and I will put that in the show notes. If people want to find you, just real quick, everything will be in the show notes, but what's the best way for them to find you?
Check me out on Instagram. It's trauma.matrix, so you can find me there.
Okay. Perfect. And you're not off the hook yet. So, if you had to leave people with, well, first of all, thank you so much for coming, Emma. This was enlightening and I could probably talk to you forever.
Yeah, it's so good to talk to people who get it, 'Cause so many people
Absolutely.
don't. So it's really refreshing to not have to, people look away, they feel uncomfortable, and to be able to look someone in the eye and talk about this stuff, it's really nice.
Yeah.
I appreciate that too.
Agreed. Agreed. And hopefully that's what this podcast is doing because I hope people are listening and feeling. I do have people reach out to me after the podcast personally and be like, wow, like you guys hit the nail right on the head. Like, what's my next step? And that's really what we're trying to do is share the information and help people become aware because so many people, this is their norm. They grew up that way and they have no idea that a better life and a happier life and a life with boundaries and a life with being yourself is even out there.
Yeah, putting yourself first, I think that's really the key. It's not all about what someone else feels or what someone else wants. Living your life for you, your own terms, and being your true identity. Because
Mm-hmm.
when we're in a narcissistic system, that is not allowed. You
Mm-mm.
have to play the role. You have to do the thing that the system wants you to do. And it's not, in a sense, it's not personal. That's not to say that nobody holds any responsibility, but it's a systemic thing. It's like the system kind of operates to smother everyone. So,
Right. Absolutely. So, okay. So I said you weren't off the hook, but I want you to give some last words of wisdom from Emma Lyons. Like, what if you could give people one either tip, trick, strategy, or just something to keep with them for the day? What would it be?
that's a tricky one because it's I think just talk about this. if you're resonating with this, it's not even a trick. It's like find someone to talk to about it. It's not a trick at all or a tip. It's just reach out and talk to someone who understands. It's simple. Don't try to talk to your friend who doesn't have a clue what's going on, or don't try to talk to your family if you suspect this in your family. Find someone who gets it and have a conversation with them because then you'll get that resonance and that mirroring that probably you may never have gotten as a child. I know I never got that mirroring. I never got my feelings mirrored back to me. So find someone who can be that mirror for you and be really discerning about who you share it with because a lot of people can't handle it.
Mm-mm. No, and the mirroring is super, super important and beneficial. And yes, so I tell people when you choose a therapist, a coach, a counselor, whatever it is, even a group that you're in, find someone who has been through what you've been, that has that compassion and that has the empathy and the understanding. Because it's like if you
Yeah,
talk to people about, if I go to therapists and talk about my life and she's asking me questions and she didn't grow up with two alcoholic parents, she has no clue. I mean, she only has textbook knowledge
yeah, exactly. That's
and
the difference. Yeah.
mhm, lived experience coaching and therapy is 100% different. Now,
Yeah.
of course, you
And
don't.
that's
Yeah, you also don't want to go to someone that has been on this process for like 6 months because you want to be, you know what I mean? Because it can actually be more traumatizing if you go to someone and they've just been like just now, what I mean, starting on their own journey because you want to feel safe. And that's the most important thing is that you feel safe and heard and validated. But you also want to be, if you're going to go to someone that's going to dig up all this stuff, I mean, it's not easy always. And
yeah.
you want
You want
someone that
someone
is
who's grounded
equipped.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because
That
I
it
think a lot of people, this information comes up or they have this arena and then they get very destabilized and they're grasping for validation here, there, and everywhere. I've definitely seen that in other people. But yeah, everything you can find it all inside yourself. But find the mirror that works for you, whether it be a therapist or coach, someone your gut will tell you who's the right person.
mm-hmm. Yep. I remember my very first client, she said to me, I've been going to therapy for 11 years, $110 a week for 11 years. And in 18 minutes, you told me more about why I was the way I was and one little thing I could do that will change my life. And I said, girl, I was you.
Yeah.
I was like, it's that simple. So, well, thank you so much, Emma, for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tammy. Great to be in your world. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And for everybody else out there listening, you can go to the show notes, grab the little freebie, all the information you can get, and find someone to talk to open up with, to share your heart, share your soul. You will feel so, so much better. Thank you so much. And you guys have a blessed day.